All right. I am excited to bring back David Palmer to join us for a conversation, part of our podcast series, Innovators on the Block. David is an executive from Vodafone. He led their blockchain strategy. Within Vodafone, they founded an entity called PairPoint, where David heads innovation there, and as a product leader at PairPoint, doing some amazing things across multiple industries, automotive being one of them within this whole economy of things space. As many of blockchain is about exchange of value, and Pairpoint is doing some really cool things. So we're going to have a fascinating conversation on how they're leveraging blockchain technology, what business models have emerged from it. David is a great ambassador for the industry. He's spoken at several events. He's an author. He blogs or puts articles on social media, and I'm very fortunate to have him back. We had a conversation like this in San Francisco. We were together then, and this one we're doing virtual from London. Welcome, David Palmer.
Tanvir, and yeah, it's such a pleasure to be back on the Disruptors on the Block, having this discussion with you. I think it was about a year ago. I think it was about a year ago we had the discussion in San Francisco. I was also in San Francisco, I think last month, and since then I've been to Dubai. Recently, a few days ago, got back from New York Tech Week, and all the discussions at the events I was at and the meetings is all about AI and Web3 and Bitcoin and transformation and the future. So yeah, it's a really good time to have this discussion. And of course, the heart of innovation, right? The heart of disruption is the Valley, right? San Francisco, where every sign has AI next to it, where all of the major startups or most of them have come from. And it's a real honor to talk about disruptive technologies to someone from that area and immersed in that sort of innovation.
Yeah, Valley, no doubt. Obviously, great innovation happening where we are. So I feel very blessed to be right here in the heart of Silicon Valley. However, you mentioned Dubai. You said you were in Dubai
Yeah, I've
recently?
been to Dubai in between.
I want to talk to you about Dubai, right? Now, when it comes to blockchain, though, David, here I feel in almost every other category, there's a clear lead, or call it domination, or call it a huge leap or lead over anyone else. But when it comes to blockchain, I also see other jurisdictions doing some really cool things. Right? Last week, Dubai announced a $3 billion real estate tokenization project. Right? And this is was a pretty big hotel brand too. Was it for the Four Seasons? I'm having a mind freeze, right? But it was a premier hotel brand whose properties are being tokenized, right? And they expect to double and triple that. Obviously, they're making some huge investments. What is your overall from that Dubai trip? I'm curious to know, how was your experience in Dubai?
No, I think they're benefiting from some of the things you're benefiting from now, right? Which is a friendly or friendlier regulatory and governmental environment, and we've seen since we've had more positivity in that area, that leads to more investment, it leads to more risk taking, it leads to more entrance to the market. And it also leads to more enterprise and financial institution participation. I think the difference with Dubai is that they've had that, right? So they've been actively soliciting or incentivizing protocols to be there through favorable tax regimes. The government for many years have been pushing innovation in blockchain, but also providing demand for it. So, blockchain government, it was called Blockchain 2020, still ongoing, the programs, but where they want to put blockchain into all of their solutions. And they're now doing similar things with AI. And of course, trying to merge the technologies, right, to have better solutions. So I think that's very, very positive in Dubai. I think in the US now, you mentioned the real estate tokenization numbers in Dubai, which are very, very encouraging, but I think just the tip of the iceberg. But I think if you look at the US and even Europe and London, where I'm based, tokenization of real world assets is tipped by 2030 to be a 600 billion opportunity. And you're going to see with the regulatory improvements, a lot more financial institutions starting to play a role. We're seeing a lot of financial institutions, with Bitcoin and Bitcoin treasuries for governments and companies buying Bitcoin etc. But I think in terms of assets, I think the regulatory regime, which makes it easier and less risky to participate in that market, could be the things that fuels massive adoption. And of course, what that leads to is not just the tokens; it leads to which platform you use, right, and the supply of platforms and processing. So it will lead to growth across the whole market at layer one, layer two, and the application space, which should be very positive for the industry.
That's great to know. We will switch gears a little bit, right? I want to learn more about, and for the audience especially, about all the cool things you guys are doing at PairPoint. But before we get there, are you at liberty to share how this idea emerged within Vodafone, right? Was it a coffee meeting between you and your peers, or was it in a boardroom? When and how was this conceived?
So I've been in Web3 blockchain. I don't think the word Web3 existed back then. So blockchain for years. So I'd been sort of active on Ethereum, programming smart contracts, looking at use cases outside of Vodafone. But I became fascinated to say, well, how could this technology, which is revolutionary, not just in terms of tokens and smart contracts, but in terms of what it can do to what we call the external automation boundary, meaning where an organization does business with parties externally that it doesn't absolutely trust. The only way to get that trust is through a contract, right? And through the legal system. But that doesn't work for real time positions where you need to, establish trust with another entity in real time, and you don't have time to contract. And that's when I started looking at this for IoT, because IoT was a great example of an area where if you have two devices that want to exchange data, you don't have a contract. How are you going to get that done, right? In the traditional world, the other party would need to go on the supplier list. You'd need to have a contract. You'd need to get the contract agreed. And I was saying, well, what about if you had a blockchain and smart contract and cryptography? Could it speed that up? And that's sort of where this came
How
from.
long back was this, David?
This was
Was this
2017, 18. Right? So
17?
this is
Okay, a couple of years.
yeah. So that's when we sort of came up with this this concept of devices not only being connected but being on chain, having a wallet, having a digital identity, having verifiable credentials, being assigned smart contracts. So with all of those things, you can have connected devices transacting. And it really came from that thing about how long it would take to procure services where you don't have contracts already, and how blockchain could look at that. So that's where the economy of things came from. I believe I came up with it. IBM disputed, but I believe I came up with the term, and that's where PairPoint and this whole thing came from, because we actually came out of Vodafone IoT, which had over 100 million connected devices already. And what we were really looking at is, okay, could blockchain make a difference, right? Could blockchain make a market? Could it automate transactions? And that's where we were in 2018. Now we sort of extend that to say, okay, can blockchain plus AI bring intelligence to these devices, right? And with the
And to
agentic AI,
clarify, the 100 million was the number then. But
yeah, so
yeah,
it's
that's how we're
200
on.
million now. So I think it was 120 million then, and it's
That's a big
now
number.
200 million connected devices, and I
And
think
when you
over
talk about
50
connected
million.
devices, what are common examples of connected devices?
With anything from drones, cabinets, sensors, vehicles, e-bikes, because you've got to remember that as we move to the internet economy needed data. But now as we move to the AI economy, data is the fuel. And so if businesses want to have an AI business, the only way you can do it is by connecting your business. And where you have a business that has devices, i.e. a real world business, then you need those devices to be connected. Sensors, cars, trucks, drivers, phones. All of these things come together and are connected, producing data. And then go into in the future large language models, small language models, and then you have AI in business, right? You won't have AI in business without the data. So that's why the Internet of Things is growing, and also why we think that the work we're doing is so important to moving from the Internet of Things to the economy of AI, or the economy of things to the economy of AI, because of the link with data.
No, what you said is fascinating, David. I don't know if I could even put a number. They say by 2050, there'll be 10 billion humans on the planet, which is staggering, right? But
Yeah.
in the device world, each category may have tens of billions of devices, right? If I do the math, the drones or containers or phones, vehicles. The list is endless. Do you know how big this market is going to be from, from a device perspective and a dollar perspective?
So the projections are, in fact, I was presenting at New York Tech Week, and some of the projections are pretty enormous, right? So we're expecting that by 2035, there'll be a US dollar 10 trillion economy for autonomous systems with 900 million devices or units, predominantly at layer 3 and layer 4, right? So that's 2035, basically 900 million units, which are autonomous, just autonomous, right? If you look at the IoT market, the autonomous vehicles, we're expecting 76 million autonomous vehicles by 2035, 1.3 billion AI robots by 2035. And there are some projections that have as many as 1 trillion connected devices by 2035. So you can see
One
how
trillion by
the
when?
link, yeah, 1 trillion. So you can see how the link between the move to the AI economy, where business models need data, and to have data, they need everything to be connected, and they need the data from those connected devices. And we can see how that move to the AI economy is linked to the growth in IoT, to Internet of Things or connected machines.
Another thing that fascinated me, David, was the way y'all are approaching this. I think y'all are positioning yourself as the operating system for IoT. Is that correct? And can you tell us a little more about that approach, right?
Yeah, it's about making a market out of IoT, right? So it's not necessarily, I mean, I think as we move to operating systems are increasingly starting to incorporate different technologies, right? So you could say that the new digital operating system for the new digital world now will have metaverse technology, so AR, VR, mixed reality. You can say that it will have for sure AI, it will have blockchain, Web3, Web2, ERP systems. And what we're going to see with the applications that are coming out now and the future applications is a mashup of those new technologies, right? Maybe with a new interaction point, moving from mobile to glasses to agents, right? As the interaction point between people and machines, agents, and content and services. So I think that's important. But from our point of view, we believe that specifically for machines, that we bring something unique, right? Which is the ability for machines to have a digital identity, right? For the ability for these machines to have verifiable credentials using things like ZK proofs, the ability for these machines to trust each other using those credentials and the digital identity, and then the ability for these machines to transact with each other automatically. So that's where we were, I'd say, 2018. Now, that operating system for IoT is about also how these machines or devices can essentially make the data available to AI, whether that's public LLMs or specific LLMs for the industry. It's also about how you can bring intelligence back to these devices, right? And make them intelligent and able to make decisions, especially when you get to these autonomous systems, right? Who don't have somebody with them, who don't have someone controlling them, but need to have dynamic intelligence, right? Very interesting. Some of the not so positive headlines coming out of California, and the destruction of the Waymo taxis, right? The Waymo robo taxis, $600,000 each. What they were essentially doing was hailing the ride on the app, and the vehicles would come, and then they would essentially set them on fire. Imagine if those vehicles didn't just have the machine learning, but they had AI. Which could read the news, understand that there was riots in that area, understand that there was a risk level, and then take the necessary action not to go to any unknown rides, right, or to shut down new people downloading the app or something, right? So you're seeing how with the new operating system or the additions to the operating systems, how important it is not only to have devices that can trust and transact with each other securely, but also have the need to bring intelligence, right? Especially where you have autonomous devices.
Since we're talking about, you mentioned something about the automotive industry. Currently, can you share um, a a specific use case that is in production where stuff is happening, whether it's parking or paying of tolls, and just walk us through this, right? I think it'll be great
Yeah.
for our
So
viewers.
the first thing we did. So originally when we looked at this, it was parking. right? Just simply because you can use the location of the vehicle with a geofence or precise positioning location of the parking or the toll, and you can automatically, based on the correlation of those locations, trigger a payment. Right. So that sort of technology is very, very exciting. Obviously, it's live with parking, but it could be also used for retail cases and all the rest of it. Right. This is where essentially you're using correlation of cellular correlation of location of the device and the trigger transaction. So that's live. Also, EV charging is live and totally. All of those things, obviously, with the EV charging, with the electric vehicle charging, you have two devices. Those devices have an identity. You put the gun in the vehicle. You have an exchange of VIN number and charger ID. You then initiate a smart contract lookup of the payment method and the amount of payment that the vehicle could make. And then you automatically orchestrate that through whatever payment rail is preferred by the device. So that is live. It's live. I think they're slated by the end of this year to be up to 800,000 chargers live on the network. I think at the moment maybe there's about
And in
300
which
chargers.
jurisdiction is this, in the UK?
This is Europe. Yeah, this is in
In
Europe.
Europe.
So
Okay, so it's
this is
not just
across.
you.
No,
Yeah,
no,
okay,
it's
it's almost
across Europe.
like,
Yeah, it's across Europe.
okay.
And so that's live. Yeah, with automotive, there's live trials on tolling in Europe as well, and some fairly mature products in supply chain and logistics as well.
We'll come to supply chain in a minute. While you talk about parking, is your customer a mom and pop, like a single car owner, or is this mostly fleets that you're like
Yeah,
catering to, or you do
it's
both?
business to business. Yeah, part of the issue and why originally when I sketched this out 8 years ago or 7 years ago, it was an autonomous vehicle is because the autonomous vehicle doesn't have someone in it, right? So you don't have the get out of jail with a mobile app. So in Europe, if you go to a charger, there's something called PSD2 where every charger needs to have a NFC point of sale on it. So essentially, you don't need to join anything. You can just go and pay with your card, right? So if it's just a consumer, you have to limit the value that you can add. With business vehicles, removing the driver from the transaction is important because what that allows you to do is essentially for automotive manufacturers to start bundling charging into this monthly subscription, right? So you can have an all-you-can-eat subscription and you can get charging included. For fleets, it allows fleets to remove the driver from the transaction. I don't know how it is in the US, but in Europe, you have a high turnover of drivers, right? So you have a lot of temporary drivers who come in. And it's very difficult to manage your payment credentials across drivers, right? So the solution we provide allows the vehicle to be the payment credential and for us to authenticate different drivers to use the one payment credential in the vehicle. So for fleets, it's also very, very useful. And even for families, it means that you can manage the payment per vehicle. And I think that is important as we now start moving into autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles also use the capability that we call an intelligent point of sale. So you can buy and sell with it. So with the use cases we highlighted so far, it's about buying. It's about a car buying, charging, a car paying for tolls, a car paying for parking, not the driver, but the car, and with a business credential. In the future, as you move into ride hailing, interesting to see that in Texas, we're expecting that Tesla will roll out cars that have the self-driving capability or robo-taxi capabilities. In the future, I can see Tanvir, you buy a Tesla or another similar type of vehicle. It's in your driveway 90 to 95% of the time. And just like Uber, where you sell the spare capacity when you're not in your home or empty properties, you can sell that 95% capacity when your car is parked for robotaxi. So it drops you off and you say, robotaxi mode. So then you need not only to have part of your identity dedicated to that vehicle, which we do. The vehicle needs to be able to buy and sell, and you need to be accountable for things that your vehicle does. But in this case, our technology also allows the vehicle to take payments as well. So we call it an intelligent point of sale, and that is the position at the moment. We're working on bringing AI to the edge, and we think that will also allow for dynamic payments. Vehicle able to choose the most efficient payment method or the most efficient means to transact with the person, also being able to validate their credentials, etc. So yeah, this is where we are at the moment, but autonomous is where we're going.
Great. This is very exciting. Now, look beyond automotive industry. What are some of the other mega industry? Like I think supply chain will probably be huge as well, right? Earlier I spoke about containers. So do you see that happen? For what I was told in the supply chain and the shipping business, it's very old school, very paper driven, right? And these containers travel through multiple ports sometimes, right, in their journey. So what kind of a disruption will that industry experience?
So we saw some of it with TradeLens, right? So TradeLens was a supply chain solution between IBM and Maersk, and it was about automating the documentation and digitizing the documentation. It failed. I think it was ahead of its time, and also maybe you needed more participants in the ecosystem, right? More stakeholders to make it more universal. But at the heart of it, just like every other business, AI will be driving supply chains, right? And they will, and as there's more intelligence at different layers of the supply chain, you need more data, right? And the AI will then act on that data, both time series learned data and real time data. So for that, you need devices in the supply chain to be connected. You sometimes need that connection to link location to other rules, and you need to be able to act on that, right? So you need to be able to act on the rules and make these devices in the supply chain programmable. So those are the sort of solutions we're working on. And there's a colleague of mine that specializes in supply chain that is rolling out those products, right? I think one of them is live at the moment, and it's all about programmable devices and traceability in the supply chain, where you can have real time actions based on real time events.
In any of these industries, or if we go back to the automotive, are you already seeing a two-way transaction happen, David? I mean, two ways. One is a car paying for toll road usage, or a car paying for parking, a car paying for charging, right? But can be the other way around, where maybe the car is selling a little bit of power it has on a full battery on the grid, and then making some money, right? Are we already there yet, or that's going to happen soon?
I think it's the next phase. So there was a famous statement about electric cars being a mobile grid, able to essentially store energy and sell it back in. And there's a lot of talk about peer to peer, where essentially you can generate power in your vehicle through a solar panel, and then you can sell that directly into a house, right, or another device. So I think cars as mobile power or mobile grid, dynamic grid is definitely coming, but it's not the we partner with Energy Web Foundation, and we've been working with them a long time on these sort of technologies. And the other thing I believe is not only cars selling energy, but also data and devices as a whole selling data is going to be the next big thing, as we need that data to fuel AI in business. So I think that won't be happening, but not now. I mean, we are working on some use cases around that now, but I can't say too much.
Appreciate you addressing that. We'll switch gears a little bit to talk about how difficult or easy was this to get buy-in from the, and kudos to the for the Vodafone management to support this, right? But was it easy? Was it hard? And like a three-part question, right? Was it easy? Was it hard? And what advice would you give your peers who want their management to get strategic with blockchain, right? Because blockchain is one of the missions of ours at through our podcast, etc. We want to see enterprise blockchain as a category grow, right? And sometimes I run into folks like some of your peers in other industries where they're doing great things, they're saving their company tens of millions of dollars, maybe 50, 100 million, but the mind share is still not, because those businesses are generating, billions of dollars a quarter, right? Anyway, so how was that journey getting buy-in from Vodafone, and what are some of the lessons learned?
Yeah, I think companies like Vodafone, so I can speak from telcos, but I think it's across industries. Used to be consumers of technology, but now they are technology companies, stroke platform companies, in the future data companies, right? And AI companies. So, Vodafone was already on a journey from telco to techco, right? Meaning from becoming a telecoms company to becoming a technology company. And I think the ethos of Vodafone has always been an innovation company that's very big, global, but not afraid to try new technologies and innovate. So when I was looking at this, there was already a small community in Vodafone looking at blockchain, evangelists like myself in different areas of the business, and there was one colleague that was looking at decentralized digital identity. And there was another colleague which was looking at roaming. There was another one looking at blockchain for contracts management. In fact, there was another one looking at blockchain for treasury and Vodafone, we called it at the time. And then I was looking at it
All within Vodafone. This
all
is all
within
within Vodafone.
Vodafone. And I was looking at it from the IoT side. So I wasn't alone, right? There were some others involved. And I remember we had a guy called Johan Weigberg at the time, who was the CTO. And I would literally wait outside his office with my laptop saying blockchain, blockchain, blockchain. It can do. And he was a great guy. And he gave me some advice. And he said, look, Dave, nobody talks about the database, right? I've got a great database that does this. He said, you talk about the business side and the value added. He said, come from the business side. And I took that on to heart. And I started saying, okay, how can this generate revenue, right? How can it make a difference to the business? How can it be a differentiator? And that's what I came from, right? So when I went to like the leaders, and Johan was one of them we had to convince, as well as other leaders. In fact, it went right up to the CEO at the time. We came with a business plan, right? And we had a plan of how many devices that this could impact, and the sort of revenues that would be associated with it, and what our go-to-market was, and the revenue model, etc. So we came at it from a business point of view, and we spoke business language. And I think that was correct, right? Because a lot of people in the industry are there for the headline. They're there to talk about what could be done from a technical point of view. But if there's no market for it, what's the point? At some point, businesses, you got to speak about the profit and the P&L, and you need to speak about revenues. And if someone's going to invest in it from a business, as opposed to something else, what is the return and when? So we came at that very early. And as a result, it was understood, and we got investment, right, in something called the big bets. And it was accepted as one of the big bets, and it was funded, right? And it was funded by Vodafone up until the point where we got external investment.
Very cool. Thank you for addressing that. In terms of seeing utility, if I go back now, the crypto winter is over in a way. Now, this is not a discussion on crypto, but there was a lot of negative mindset. There was a lot of fear, uncertainty, doubt last year. Maybe some, but this year, I think a lot has changed, right? I think there's a lot more optimism. There's real utility that's happening. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was at a stable coin. It was I forgot, Circle Converge. That was a conference, right? And it was a very demure kind of. There was no buzz. Everyone was talking about we need to see utility. We need to see utility, right? And now we are seeing utility with some of the works that you're doing, etc. What do you think will drive this to the next level, right? What needs to happen for this to go next level for the whole industry?
I think some of it's happening. So positive regulatory environment happening, right? Government adoption happening.
Are you happy with the pace? Are you happy with the pace?
Well, it would have been nice if it was a more steady pace from 5 years ago to now, right? What you've had is a negative regulatory environment suddenly turn positive, and then a sprint to do as much as you can as quickly as you can, which isn't ideal, but it's better than it was a year ago, right? So I think that has been very, very positive. But it's positive because we're starting to find the use cases, right, and applications that people understand. Now, for a long time, we spoke about the TPS and the protocol and the consensus and ZK proofs, and businesses and ordinary people don't care. They don't care. You don't use ChatGPT because of the compute behind it or the processor or whatever. You're using it because it can do something that makes a difference to you. It adds value to you. And I think with Bitcoin, you're starting to see with the limited supply that is really starting to find its value in treasury, right? As digital gold, essentially. And as a result, you're starting to see demand and adoption, right? That wasn't certain. You didn't have any kind of decoupling before. It just went with the markets. Now you're starting to see a bit of decoupling. And you're starting to see that potentially institutional and governmental demand moves the way we expect it to, other things being equal, that the price of Bitcoin will increase because the demand is there, right? So that is an example of the leading crypto finding a use case and value in business and government. And that wasn't there before. And the other thing is tokenization, real world asset tokenization, where essentially you're seeing the value that this can bring to assets like real estate and other assets, and how when added to the existing financial products, this can make a real difference, right? And the leading adopters of this driving it are financial institutions, right? So I think those are the kind of things that really make a difference. We had some failures well, you could call them failures at the time, like NFTs, and that coupled with a negative market, maybe didn't do so well. But even those things will come back now. So I think it's all getting positive, and all of those things pave the way for more institutional and enterprise adoption of the technology. I think one of the biggest changes is that when we were looking at implementing this, we had to go down a permission blockchain route. And I think now we're everyone's concluding that that's dead, right? And that, as we all knew, it's public blockchains. But I think public blockchains are starting to find their way. We're starting to find the value of each. There's starting to be interoperability across layer one public blockchains. And I think more importantly, the security is improving. And you also have the ability to have privacy on public blockchains. So you have public permissioned and you have permission public that can all be done on public blockchains. So yeah, I think it's all very, very positive. I think the other driver is going to be AI, right? And where blockchain and tokens can support some of the applications for AI, which needs to be 24/7, 365, working across different environments. It's going to be really important to have the trust and the security and the dynamic aspects of these that are needed for Web3, for AI. The other side is things like DeepIn, right? If you're looking at decentralized public infrastructure projects, I was at New York Tech Week. I was giving a talk on sort of AI and Web3, and we had a guy from Bloomberg.
Last week or the week before, right? It was fairly
last
recent.
week. Last week, it just finished, and we had a guy from Bloomberg there talking about the investment in AI and where it's coming from. It comes from about, at the moment, 90% of the investment is across 4 or 5 companies. And if you look at that, there's 4 or 5 companies that are making all the investment. And if you follow that through, there's 4 or 5 companies that are going to get all the reward and the control. And we've got to ask ourselves, right, is that really healthy? Is that is that too much power? If you think about power they have now, what is it going to be like if they control every aspect of our lives to do with AI? So I think Web3 blockchain has a role to play in decentralizing investment into AI, into enabling communities to buy AI infrastructure and other countries as well, right? One of the things that is perhaps being missed in this AI transformation or the move to the AI economy is AI robots. 1.3 billion AI robots by 2035. Yeah, you think people are manufacturing cars now? They're going to be manufacturing robots. Everything will be a robot, right? And you'll have multi-purpose and you'll have specific use. Now, those will replace jobs. Yes, we accept that. But the macroeconomic aspect of that is that they also change the cost and productivity ratio and model for businesses. Because at the moment, businesses locate production where labor is cheapest, because labor is one of the major inputs to production costs. Where you don't need human labor and you change that for robot labor, then essentially it changes, right? Because you're not going to move to developed countries. You're going to locate where you have the best connectivity and electric and other
And
utility
cost of labor
infrastructure.
is high also, right?
Yeah. So it's going to be, so what happens to the developing country, right? If they can't get access to infrastructure themselves, right? So I think blockchain is going to be, and things like DeepIn and DeFi are going to be absolutely critical to bring some equality and access across different geographic and socioeconomic groups as we move to this new world.
What you said is, I think, from your vantage point, and part of Vodafone, which is such a big global brand, a storied global brand, I think this is a great vote of confidence in blockchain, right? Because I've also not worried too much, but when saw all this chaos, chaos and noise and all this attention on AI, and it almost felt like blockchain is overshadowed or whatever. Of course, a lot will happen at the intersection of AI and blockchain. But for me, I'm a believer in blockchain and its transformative potential. Yes, we are still in the relatively early days, but all this game changing stuff is going to be massive, right? And I'm glad I didn't like jump ship and start only doing AI and forget about
A lot of
blockchain.
people did, man. You look on LinkedIn and people who were blockchain experts become AI experts. But I think the truth is that what we've got is we're fortunate to live in a time where we have technology enablement and tooling on a level that's unparalleled, right? Before the impact that these technologies will have on business and people and productivity is going to be absolutely immense and transformative. Yeah, blockchain has a role, AI has a role, Web2 technologies have a role, connectivity has a role. I think we miss sometimes the fact now that you have things like Starlink, right, and other satellite solutions. So you can not only can you have mobile connectivity on ground, you can have it virtually anywhere with satellite. And then everything is moving in a direction where we can move to this new digital world, right? And we can have this new digital infrastructure to support the new digital world. And blockchain is part of it. But I think one of the faults of blockchain has been standalone sort of mindset, right? And a standalone architecture where essentially it's like, okay, come to my protocol, join our community, and build your stuff on us, right? There wasn't any real thought about how you integrate with legacy systems or business systems or how you integrate across chains. It was this sort of come to me attitude, which isn't the way it's going, right? It's all about integration. It's all about mashups, and it's all about how different technologies can come together. And I think you're starting to see more of that mindset with blockchain, with things like account abstraction and other initiatives, which are saying, okay, we need to operate within a wider architecture of technologies. And I think that is absolutely critical.
While we're talking about AI, right? Do you anticipate AI making an impact to a point where it can simplify, because there is complexity with smart contracts? Do you think this blockchain traction and all the projects happening in blockchain will get accelerated by AI simplifying the smart contract process and all of that?
But yeah, well, it will certainly simplify how we program them, right? Because AI will be helping us code that. So you move from the prompt driven smart contract from the code to the prompt driven smart contract. And of course, smart contracts are smart, but they're not necessarily dynamic, right? They can be to an extent where you have oracles, but where you have agents, which are linked with smart contracts and oracles, that gives a whole new level of power to smart contracts, which I think will be needed for things like financial markets and, to have the reliability and the dynamic aspects that are needed. So yeah, I believe they'll go together, and I believe, as in most things, AI will help, right? And it already is.
Going back to one thing I want to clarify, all this amazing things that happening with the machine to machine commerce, right? The economy of things, doing it in the old school way, like how humans interact, like you and me going to a grocery store or going and paying for a movie ticket or whatever, right? Using the traditional, that would not have worked well in the machine economy, right? If you all didn't have what you're doing, that would it either be too expensive, inefficient, probably may not even work. So do you agree that this is like, that's a different world altogether? Payments in the human world versus the machine to machine commerce, right?
But you could argue that humans will become machines as well, right? Meaning that we will have identity, digital identity, that we will have credentials, which can all of which can be automatically verified. We will produce data, and we will do work, right? So you have human machines, you have mechanical machines, you have human intelligence, you have AI intelligence. And when you start looking at the customer experiences and customer journeys, yeah, you'll have some different paths through them. For digital journeys, I'll probably just use my agent, right, to see that through. And for hybrid journeys, then there will be a point where you still want a human to sign, right? But I expect those cases to go down. Right, and we should move. Now, there is a danger to this, right? So one of the things when I give talks on this stuff is I look at the audience. I'm looking at the audience now, and I'm going to say how many of you trust the data that's on the internet to be without bias and to be completely accurate? And not many people put their hands up, right? So I think that's an indication of the limitations of AI at the moment, which is using that same data that we don't trust, right? And some of the biases in that, will still be there, etc. So, it's AI at the moment is a use with caution. However, given the expectations and the hype and the race to get it implemented, there could be a position where the AI, with all the biases and imperfections, becomes a reality, because all the models and all the agents are using that data with the bias and the inaccuracies. And that is a danger, right? As you continue to automate everything, and humans have less of a voice and a role in the processes. So I think for now, humans need to be there. We also need to check our homework where AI is used. And I think blockchain will play a role in authenticating agents. There's already protocols doing that, signing the metadata associated with data and AI models and agents, and also providing trust, right? As to what's real and what's not real. At the moment, someone can generate a video of anything and it looks really real, right? How do you know it's not? And that's the thing where blockchain and the cryptography and the tamper-proof capabilities really come in. So it's a dynamic world. It's an exciting world as we move into autonomous and AI and tokens and automation. But it's also one where we need to find our way. And I think that's what we're trying to do in this journey, right? from my point of view, we come from the machines and the machine role in the AI economy. There'll be other things that we need to consider also.
Follow up to that is in this whole economy of things, will it make sense for all the transactions to happen in a fiat currency, whether it's the British pound or the US dollar, or you think it's more efficient if it's a stable coin, right? Or will it be a hybrid, right? What do you think will be the future state there?
You've hit the nail on the head. So the next big thing, stablecoins, right? Massive, absolutely massive
Are you
on
a big
fire.
believer in stable coins?
Massively. Yeah, it's going to be huge because it brings to fruition some stuff we've been talking about for 8, 9, 10 years, right? Which is cross-border transactions, never quite happen. Peer-to-peer transactions never quite happen. And it gives you the ability also to interact with all the existing financial institutions and all the Web3 institutions. So it's like a token of interoperability, which is recognized by bank accounts, it's recognized by banks and financial institutions, and also all the Web3 protocols. Very, very powerful. So for me, I would say stablecoins make a lot of sense. And of course, we have something called exchanges, right, which can exchange stable coins for tokens, and you can do this where it adds value. But I think stable coins are going to be really big. Along with tokenization, stable coins is the next big thing I expect to see some significant action with. And of course, you've got the Genius bill going through now, which could unleash even more activity and speed of implementation.
Beautiful. Now I want to get ready to start wrapping up. Are you able to share or highlight some of you probably to make all of these amazing things happen? You're probably partnering with half a dozen names on your website. I read like Mastercard. Can you talk a little bit about your partnerships and what value some of those partners have brought to the table?
Yeah, yeah, we've had some well-publicized announcements with Chainlink, Mastercard, Citibank, JP Morgan, other entities through the life cycle, IBM, to name a few. So these partnerships are there, and it just reflects the ecosystem, right? Which is working together. My belief, as well as stable coins, is that the financial system is so complicated, and the current models and solution providers like Mastercard have been there for so many years, and the banks, that you're not going to replace that overnight with pure Web3 solutions, right? So, and the business isn't ready for it. So for us, it makes sense in machine to machine to have smart contracts, to have digital identity and verifiable credentials, but to have the payment orchestrated by payment rails that businesses understand, be that a bank payment rail, bank-to-bank payment rail, or card payment rail. And that's where some of the partnerships with entities like MasterCard have really come to fruition. We worked a lot with them on our EV charging solution and what we call Web3 asset as a service financing using their MTN platform for tokenized deposits, so we could bring the banking capabilities in there. And we're doing a lot, and some of those partnerships are growing. But some of the new partners, again, I can't mention because they're new and we haven't announced formally what we're doing.
While we're talking about partners, I had a question on interoperability. Have you seen enough with interoperability, or there is a big bump that we need to overcome?
What type of interoperability? The blockchain to blockchain or across technology?
Let's say blockchain to blockchain.
So again, enterprise architectures are API driven. In fact, everything's API driven, right? Even the most decentralized blockchain will somehow have an API.
APIs have eaten the world, right? Like earlier it was software eats the world, now APIs eat the world.
Exactly. So what we're seeing sensibly is that blockchains are now exposing APIs so that you can mash up the functionalities, or we call it trust as a service or blockchain as a service in big enterprise systems, right? So I think that's a significant step forward, the move to APIs. And that gives a lot of use. In terms of interoperability, I think what is interesting is you're seeing a lot more layer ones coming up than I thought. I thought we would have been in a consolidation phase now. Actually, you're seeing a lot of layer ones come up now. But you're seeing cross-chain capability with Chainlink and parachains with Polkadot. So you're starting to see it, and then of course you've got EVMs, which means that the smart contract language is common. So I think we have enough to build, but you still at the moment need to make a bet which chain you're using as your primary chain. Hopefully in the future, that's abstracted away.
To end our conversation, what's your bold prediction for the next 12 to 18-month window?
I think next 12 to 18 months, we'll have Bitcoin would have gone up. That's one prediction. But in terms of wider, a lot more use of blockchains by financial institutions, which will then enable other businesses to do it. In fact, you may see financial institutions and big businesses selling blockchain as a service to smaller ones. I think stable coins will have established itself in the currency world, and those things. I think AI will be among us. So I think you'll start to see a lot more AI in the workplace, not physical. I think the robots are slightly further off, but virtual. And we'll start to see the first real scale on autonomous vehicles. So not just in California and Texas. I think you'll start to see robo taxis and other business vehicles among us. And I think that's where we are. In terms of the machine economy, I think we will, in the next 12 to 18 months, over 1 million devices transacting, right, and using that capability.
Amazing. Well, keep up the great work you're doing, David. Again, thank you for being a wonderful ambassador for the whole industry. And I know a lot of your peers rely on you, and you guys have a great network. Love to get you back. I think this was we first had this as part of a Hyperledger virtual meetup 2.5 years ago. That video was popular, our last one too, and look forward to having you join us back in the future. I want to wish you and the whole team at Pearpoint the very best. We're going to see I think there's a beginning of exciting things, right? That we've waited for the hockey stick growth for a long time, and we are so near to that. It's going to be a wild ride, I think.
Absolutely exciting times. Thanks for having me, Tanvi. Thank you.
Pleasure's always mine. And do ping me the next time you're in the Bay Area. Love to meet for lunch, or I'll come find you in London on my trip there.
For sure. Thanks.
All right, take